Xiao Yin already had a killing intent towards Chen Tian within his heart ever since the latter first led a large group of people to the Pill Tower to capture him. However, he was merely a 9-star Dou Sheng back then. It was quite difficult to kill this old fellow. Hence, he did not act. Now that they have met again, Xiao Yin had yet to act when this old fellow had attacked first. Moreover, looking at the vicious stance of the latter, it was clear that he really wanted to take Xiao Yan's life. Xiao Yin would naturally not show mercy to this kind of enemy who possessed a desire to kill him. Although the profound Xin sect might not be very strong, the profound Sky sect behind them caused people to be a little afraid. No one could guarantee that this old fellow would find some great trouble for Xiao Yin due to his grudge against the latter. It was not Xiao Yan's character to leave a potential danger alone. Moreover, the situation in this place was currently chaotic. It was likely that news would not really spread if he killed this old fellow here. These thoughts flashed across Xiao Yan's heart. He looked at Chen Tian, who appeared quite miserable under the attack of the Sky Demon puppet. His face also became increasingly icy. Chen Tian's strength was around that of a 2-star Dou Sheng. On the other hand, with the fighting strength of the Sky Demon puppet, it would not be at a disadvantage even when facing an expert at the peak of the 3-star Dou Sheng class. Hence, it was naturally able to firmly suppress the former in their fight. Bang! Chen Tian violently collided head-on with the Sky Demon puppet in the midair. The frightening strength that was transmitted through his arm immediately caused him to take over a dozen staggering steps in the midair. Bloody qi rose within his body. A pale white expression surfaced on his face. The Sky Demon puppet did not feel any pain. It was like a killing machine when it fought. As long as Xiao Yin did not ask it to step, it would never stop. Chen Tian would suffer quite a great disadvantage when they fight. After having fallen into a disadvantage despite the long fight, Chen Tian already had the intention to withdraw within his heart. The reason he dared to snatch the scroll from Xiao Yin was because Xiao Yin was facing enemies from all directions. Not only did the experts from the Hall of Soul had an enmity with him, but even the gazes that the Heaven Demon Phoenix's group used to look at him were unfriendly. At this moment, Chen Tian would naturally wish to add insult to injury, given his character. However, he did not expect that the current Xiao Yin was actually completely different from the one at the Pill Tower back then. That endless number of tactics had caused his heart to feel a little afraid. Looks like I can only withdraw first. Once the chaos of this place end, the Hall of Soul and the rest will definitely find trouble with this brat. At that time, I will secretly attack and kill this brat. At the same time, I will also snatch the scroll back. Chen Tian finally decided to cease fighting while this thought flashed across his heart. He raised his head and looked at the Sky Demon puppet, which had rushed over once again. His body hurriedly pulled back, intending to withdraw into the chaotic battleground. Humph, where are you going? However, Chen Tian had just stepped back when an icy cold voice suddenly sounded from behind him. At the same instant, extremely frightening hot wind also arrived. This sudden attack had also caused Chen Tian's expression to change. He swiftly turned around instinctively as his palms, which were covered in Dou Qi, were hurriedly thrown forward. Bang! The fierce wind suddenly spread apart at this moment. Chen Tian, who hurriedly exchanged blows with his opponent, immediately felt a oppression in his heart. His body was forcefully shaken until it withdrew for a couple of dozen meters. He hurriedly raised his head, only to see a skinny figure standing at the spot where he had fell back from earlier. Xiao Yin. Chen Tian immediately gritted his teeth and cried when he saw that figure. Xiao Yin was expressionless. Purple-brown flames surrounded his body, causing him to appear like a fire god. His feet were stepping on the empty air as he walked over towards Chen Tian. You wish to kill me? Chen Tian involuntarily narrowed his eyes and coldly said when he saw this manner of Xiao Yin. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was lifted into a dense arc. Vast and mighty Dou Qi swiftly gathered in his palm. With just this 1-star Dou Sheng strength of yours? Chen Tian laughed furiously. He was just about to take the initiative to attack when an unusually sharp wind was suddenly transmitted from behind him. This caused his expression to change. He turned around and met it. Both of his palms danced, and his powerful Dou Qi formed an impenetrable energy web in front of him. Bang bang! The sky demon puppet waved its arm. Each time it was swung, it would bring about an ear-piercing sharp wind-splitting sound. Space collapsed and numerous dark black crack lines appeared. Boom! Qin Tian quietly cried out bitterly when faced with this fierce attack by the sky demon puppet. His body continued to pull back. The strength of the sky demon puppet had basically suppressed him until he only had the ability to defend. If this continues, I will sooner or later be seriously injured in the hands of this puppet. Looks like I cannot be entangled any longer. Bastard brat. The old me will remember this debt. Sooner or later, the time will come for you to repay it. Qin Tian viciously cried out within his heart. His palm wind suddenly strengthened as he forcefully pushed aside the attack by the sky demon puppet. His toes pressed on the ground and his body flew backwards. Qin Tian's heart had just sighed in relief as his body stood in the midair when a dangerous feeling suddenly spread out from deep within his heart. The goosebumps all over his body stood up at this moment. Sky-burying seal. A slight cold cry that carried some cold wind quietly resounded beside Qin Tian's ear while Qin Tian's heart was permeated with a sense of danger. This is bad. Qin Tian's expression instantly became pale when he sensed the activity behind him. Xiaoyan's speed was so quick that it had exceeded his expectations. Bang! Dou Qi hurriedly surged within Qin Tian's body as he reacted to the situation. Before he could completely form a defense behind him, a palm-sized purple-brown handprint gently landed on his back. A frightening force surged out like floodwaters. Grug! A sleek redness immediately surged up Qin Tian's pale white face after he forcefully received this heavy blow. A mouthful of fresh blood was involuntarily spat out. His body also staggered and withdrew, knocking against a couple of experts as he did so. That force had also shaken these unlucky fellows until they vomited a couple mouthfuls of blood. Qin Tian's body transformed into an arc that flew towards the distant. His face was covered with blood as he turned around with much difficulty. His eyes were vicious as he looked at the increasingly distant Xiaoyan. That vicious, poisonous feeling caused one to have goosebumps. Little bastard, if I do not avenge this, I, Qin Tian, will have been a sect leader in vain. In the future, I will definitely get you to regret your action today. Qin Tian roared viciously within his heart. He was originally the type who would take revenge for any grudge. Xiaoyan had nearly killed him on the spot. This vengeance was sufficient to allow him to remember it for a lifetime. Bang! Numerous vicious thoughts flashed across Qin Tian's heart. His body also landed heavily on the ground, rubbing and forming a deep gully, after which he violently collided onto the hard pillar of the large hall. Immediately, he spat out another mouthful of fresh blood. After struggling shakily onto his feet, Qin Tian's eyes penetrated through the crowd and looked at the indifferent-looking Xiaoyan in the distant with vicious eyes. After which, he turned around and left. Puff! Qin Tian had just turned around when his body suddenly became stiff. A dark golden fist penetrated through his chest. Fresh blood adhered onto the dark golden arm and continued to drip downwards. Those eyes of Qin Tian stared firmly at the hollow face. Only then was he aware that Xiaoyan had truly felt a murderous intent towards him. The latter would not give him any chance to take revenge. What a vicious tactic! Blood seeped out from within Qin Tian's mouth. His life force also swiftly disappeared from within his body. Immediately, his stiff body collapsed slowly. Finally, it fell onto the ground. This chief of the profound Xin sect, Qin Tian, who had reached the strength of a 2-star Dozun, had fell in the combined attack of Xiaoyan and the sky demon puppet in this manner. You can only blame yourself for everything? The chillness on Xiaoyan's face was gradually withdrawn when he saw Qin Tian collapsing slowly. He originally had no enmity with Qin Tian. However, the latter insisted on thinking that Chen Xian had died in his hands and had tried to kill him with all sorts of methods. Qin Tian deserved this ending of his today. Xiaoyan kept the sky demon puppet into his storage ring after having like Qin Tian with lightning-like speed. Tian Huazunjia, little fairy doctor, and the others also flashed over. Finally, the few of them once again gathered and cautiously watched the chaos within the large hall. What happened to that human puppet? Are you all right? Xiao Yin glanced at little fairy doctor and asked. I'm fine. I have lured the human puppet to another place. These things might possess the desire to kill, but they do not possess any intelligence. Little fairy doctor smiled sweetly as she replied. Xiao Yin nodded slightly. His eyes swept over the place. The Heaven Demon Phoenix Tribe and Wind Lightning Pavilion has each obtained a scroll. The Ice River Valley and the Burning Flame Valley has also gained something. Additionally, another 2 scrolls has landed into the hands of 2 experts who are quite strong. Tian Huazunjia softly spoke from the side. Xiao Yin was startled when he heard this, after which he nodded once again. These factions had come prepared. Moreover, there were also some truly experts amongst those who had come alone. It was not too surprising for them to obtain the scrolls. What should we do now? There are only 3 scrolls remaining, which are being snatched by people. An unknown number of people has already died because of those 3 scrolls. Do we need to snatch another one? Little fairy doctor asked. If we snatch more of it, it will cause those who has yet to obtain any treasure to lose their sense of reasoning. Xiao Yin shook his head. He knitted his brows slightly and replied, Moreover, the feeling that these 10 scrolls give me does not appear like a Tian-class Dou technique. You mean, these 10 scrolls are all fake? Little fairy doctor and the rest asked in shock. These scrolls are indeed Dou techniques or Qi methods which are quite strong. However, they are likely not the Tian-class Dou technique. All of us are likely fooled. Xiao Yin narrowed his eyes and muttered. Little fairy doctor and the others also knitted their brows tightly when they heard these words. They rotated their eyes and suddenly said, Those fellows from the Hall of Soul, what are they planning to do? Xiao Yin was startled. His eyes followed the sight of little fairy doctor, only to see old ghost Dou Sheng and a couple of Hall of Soul expert was actually adopting an encircling formation as they slowly walked towards the Dou Sheng skeleton at the middle of the large hall. Their target is the Dou Sheng skeleton? Tian Huazunjia commented in a deep voice. Should we intervene and stop these fellows? Ziyin spoke with a desire to see some action. Xiao Yan's eyes were staring intently at the skeleton that was seated on the stone chair. His eyes suddenly shrunk a moment later. An instant earlier, he had seen the finger of that skeleton trembling slightly. This Dou Sheng skeleton is alive? A shock suddenly spread out from Xiao Yan's heart at this moment. The sudden drastic change in Xiao Yan's expression also attracted the notice of little fairy doctor's group. Everyone were startled as they carefully asked, What is it? Xiao Yin inhaled a deep breath of cold air. He looked at old ghost Dou Sheng and the others who were increasingly close to the stone chair. A bad feeling suddenly rose within his heart. An instant later, he suddenly grabbed Ziyin and Qing Lin beside him and cried out in a deep voice, Pull back quickly! Ugh! This unusual action of Xiao Yin caused little fairy doctor and the rest to be at a loss. However, everyone trusted Xiao Yan's words. Hence, they might be uncertain of the reason for this action of his, but they still immediately turned around and hurriedly followed him. While Xiao Yan's group was hurrying back, old ghost Dou Sheng's group had also stepped into a 10-feet radius of the stone chair. Both of his eyes were fiery hot as he watched the seated skeleton. Dou Sheng. This level possessed an allure that even they could not resist. An elite Dou Sheng might be able to be called the top expert of this continent, but there was still too much of a gap to the true peak. Dou Zun and Dou Sheng was basically a great leap apart. The gap between the two was basically impossible to be made up by anything. Is this the bones of an elite Dou Sheng? Old ghost Dou Sheng's eyes were wild and hot as they stared at the jade-white skeleton. He involuntarily leaked his tongue. His feet took another 2 steps forward, and his large hand directly grabbed towards the skeleton. Qi. When the hands of old ghost Dou Sheng were about to touch the skeleton, a slight wiggling had suddenly appeared in that space. Immediately, they appear to have transformed into countless number of extremely sharp spatial thorns that ruthlessly pierced onto old ghost Dou Sheng's hand. The slight pain that was emitted from his hand caused old ghost Dou Sheng to be startled. He hurriedly withdrew his hand, only to discover that quite a lot of fresh blood had already flowed out from his hand. There were a couple of droplets amongst them that had gently dripped on the skeleton that was sitting down. An uneasy emotion quietly spread out from the heart of old ghost Dou Sheng as he looked at the fresh blood that landed on the jade-white skeleton. Dou Sheng Tianzuan, what is it? The couple of Hall of Soul experts, who had surrounded him, asked uncertainly. They were also startled when they saw old ghost Dou Sheng suddenly becoming stunned. Old ghost Dou Sheng appeared as though he did not hear their scream. His eyes firmly stared at the blood that dripped onto the skeleton. At this moment, these blood appeared like water that had touched cotton when they rolled onto the bones. It ended up quietly seeping into the bones. The eyes of old ghost Dou Sheng suddenly shrunk when the blood completely seeped into the bones. At this moment, he suddenly sensed that some life had actually once again surged within this skeleton that had been dead for an unknown number of years. This is bad. Withdraw quickly. Old ghost Dou Sheng finally reacted to the situation. The moment he sensed that life force, an anxious roar was emitted from within his mouth. At the same time, his feet stomped onto the ground and his body flew backwards in a lightning-like manner. Old ghost Dou Sheng's reaction was quick, but the other few experts from the Hall of Soul were a little slower. Hence, they only began to use their agility and pull back after being stunned for a moment. However, it was already too late at this moment. When they had just pulled back, the jade-white skeleton that was seated on the stone chair had already shook gently. After which, 2 clusters of faint blood-red color suddenly flashed and appeared within the empty skull. Ah! This Dou Sheng skeleton slowly raised its head when the blood glow appeared. An earth-shaking roar was suddenly emitted from his mouth at this moment in a thunder-like manner. The frightening roar had transformed into a substance like sonic wave in an instant. It became like a storm as it spread apart in a lightning-like manner with the stone chair being at the center. Bang! The first that was implicated by the sonic storm was naturally the few experts from the Hall of Soul, who were a little slow to react. The sonic wave caught up with them in an instant. Immediately, their bodies appeared to be like sandbags that had been struck by a cannonball. They immediately burst apart and turned into a bloody fog that spread apart with a bang slash. Humph! That old ghost Dou Sheng had also yet to escape from the attacking range of the sonic wave. However, he was strong and he had reacted sufficiently quickly. Hence, he did not instantly burst into a bloody fog like the other unlucky fellows. However, that sonic wave that swept over still caused some blood to churn within his body. A low and deep muffled sound appeared in his throat. Clearly, he had also suffered some injuries. Even with the strength of old ghost Dou Sheng, he was unable to endure a sonic wave roar from this Dou Sheng skeleton. Hence, this sonic wave could be truly considered the scythe of a death god for most people belonging to the Hall of Soul. Quite a number of experts within the large hall were currently still chasing the 3 remaining scrolls. The sharp sonic wave spread with a lightning speed. The many figures in the mid-air suddenly stiffened. Immediately, bang sounded and they blasted apart like a blood fog. In an instant, the entire large hall had been filled with a rich blood fog. This sudden bloody scene had also caused everyone to wake up from the allure of the Tian Clasto skill. Some shock swiftly surged up their faces. Dou Qi surged out from their bodies without being held back as the many figures withdrew a great distance from the center of the large hall in a miserable manner, appearing like dogs which had lost their homes. The sonic wave spread. After causing this slaughter that caused one's heart to feel a chill, everyone finally scattered with some ugly expression. They looked at the slowly scattering blood fog in the midair. A rich shock and chillness appeared within their hearts. At least 100 people had died under that sonic wave earlier. Amongst these people were 2 elite Dou Zuns, a sonic wave that can kill even elite Dou Zuns. Everyone who had escaped a calamity violently swallowed a mouthful of saliva at this moment. Even an expert like that black-robed old man from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe also had a face covered with cold sweat at this moment. Old ghost Dou Sheng, what have you done? Tang Zhan, who had recovered from this unexpected change, suddenly turned their furious eyes towards old ghost Dou Sheng, who had escaped. His voice was furious as they spoke. Everyone turned their furious eyes towards old ghost Dou Sheng when they heard Tang Zhen's furious voice. All of them had clearly saw that this manner was caused by this old ghost. Upon being stared at furiously by so many experts, even old ghost Dou Sheng ended up twitching the corner of his mouth. His mouth was filled with bitterness. He had also never expected that things would suddenly become like this. A skeleton that had clearly lost all of its strength was actually be able to suddenly unleash such a frightening strength. Xiao Yan's group did not suffer much injuries because they were quick to pull back. However, the skin on their heads were involuntarily numb when they saw that there were less than half of the number of people left within the large hall at this moment. Was that skeleton not a little too frightening? The old me is unaware of why that skeleton that had been dead for countless number of years will suddenly erupt. A couple of experts from our Hall of Soul are also dead. Old ghost Dou Sheng inhaled a deep breath of air and spoke in a deep voice with the intent of washing off his responsibility. There were many experts present. It was impossible for him to offend all of them with his strength alone. If it was not because your fresh blood had landed on the skeleton, how would it have awakened? Are you trying to shrink from your responsibility after things had become like this? Xiao Yan laughed coldly when he heard the explanation. The expression of old ghost Dou Sheng changed when he heard these words from Xiao Yan. However, upon sensing an increasing number of furious gazes from around him, he could only cup his hands together and said, "This matter is indeed because of the recklessness of the old me. However, the most important thing now is not to hold others accountable. If the old me guessed correctly, that Dou Sheng skeleton should be a thought left behind by that expert when he was alive. It is not difficult to deal with. As long as we join hands, we will definitely be able to suppress it. Just the thought alone is already so frightening. If another of that sonic wave earlier arrives, it was likely that not many people in this place can survive." Tang Zhen's expression was as deep as water. Quite a number of experts from the Burning Flame Valley had been killed by the sonic wave. If it was not because now was not the right moment, he would have been unable to control himself and attack old ghost Dou Sheng. Since we have already obtained the scroll, all of us should just leave. This things is too frightening, someone within the crowd softly said. His voice contained a horror that could not be hidden. That kind of strength was really too frightening. It is not possible to leave. This thought will definitely finish off everyone who has barged into the remains. Should we flee, it is likely that no one will be able to leave alive. Old ghost Dou Sheng spoke in a deep voice. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. He felt that this old ghost seemed to really desire to finish off this Dou Sheng skeleton. However, given old ghost Dou Sheng's cautious character, he would definitely not risk his life like this for no reason. Old ghost Dou Sheng's words had also stirred some chaos. Some of the weaker individuals had an even richer horror on their faces. However, no one dared to turn around and flee. Creak. During the time when even was in a chaos, the interior of the large hall that was permeated by a blood fog suddenly emitted a slight sound of bone moving. This sound immediately silenced all the commotion. Numerous horrified eyes were staring at the middle of the large hall permeated by a blood fog. Horror spread in an increasingly serious manner at this moment. Clatter, clatter. The sound of bone touching the ground became closer. That sound was not loud, but it appeared to be stepping on everyone's heart, causing everyone to feel extremely pressured. Be careful, do not separate. Xiao Yan's expression was grave. He turned his head and softly spoke to Little Fairy Doctor's group. This situation seemed to have already exceeded their control. It would really be too frightening for the skeleton of a Dou Sheng to be revived. Little Fairy Doctor and the rest also nodded. If things were not done properly this time around, it was likely that everyone here would end up dying. It was likely that hardly anyone present could forcefully resist the kind of sonic wave attack from earlier. The blood fog within the large hall slowly rippled under the gaze of everyone. Immediately, a blood-red skeleton that had been dyed red took slow steps out of the blood fog and appeared in front of everyone's gazes. Those who barge into the remains shall die. The blood-colored skeleton halted its footsteps 100 meters in front of everyone. It raised its head. Blood light flickered within those empty eyes. An ancient hoarse, indifferent voice quietly resounded within the large hall. The skeleton thin body stood within the large hall. Its originally jade-white body had already turned scarlet. At a glance, it gave one a kind of extremely strong bloody feeling. Two clusters of faint red glow flickered slightly within the skeleton's eyes. Two scrolls were dancing in the midair above the head of the Dou Sheng skeleton. Some unknown lucky fellow had obtained one scroll during the chaos earlier. Hence, there were currently these two scrolls remaining that were without an owner. Of course, at this moment, there were hardly anyone who dared to snatch the meat from a tiger's mouth in the face of the deterrence by the Dou Sheng skeleton. The expressions of everyone in the hall once again changed slightly when that hoarse and old voice slowly sounded. From the looks of it, they would not be able to smoothly leave if they did not defeat this Dou Sheng skeleton. Everyone, there is no need to panic. The interior of this Dou Sheng skeleton only possess a remnant spiritual imprint left by that expert when he was alive. It is not a genuine Dou Sheng. It is not impossible to defeat it. However, the precondition is that we must join hands. Otherwise, if it defeats us individually, there is a chance that all of us will perish. Old Ghost Dou Sheng spoke in a deep voice. Old Mr. Dou Sheng is right. However, since this skeleton was awakened by you, please be the first to attack. Xiaoyan smiled slightly and said, Yes, this should indeed be the case. You must take a large part of the responsibility for this matter. If you wish for all of us to join hands in dealing with it, you must be the first to fight. Tangjin also nodded and agreed. Some other experts mused for a moment before nodding in agreement. They were already quite displeased with Old Ghost Dou Sheng's reckless action. Being able to take this small revenge could relieve their anger. The shriveled face of Old Ghost Dou Sheng involuntarily twitched upon seeing this. His eyes were vicious as they stared at Xiaoyan. This soft blade of the latter had directly pushed him to the most dangerous place. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was unable to pull back. All he could do was to harden his skin and step forward. Everyone is being reasonable. In that case, the old me shall be the first to attack. However, I will remind everyone that the fewer experts there are present, the more dangerous our situation will be. Regardless of whether we have any grudge in the past, we are all currently on the same boat. No one will have any good ending if this boat capsizes. Old Ghost Dou Sheng could only harden his skin in the face of the many gazes and spoke in a righteous manner. Old Mr. Dou Sheng, please be reassured that we will not just watch you die in the hands of this Dou Sheng skeleton. Xiaoyan smilingly said. Those words that he had uttered, however, caused a green color to appear on Old Ghost Dou Sheng's face. All right, let's not talk any nonsense. You should be quick if you wish to attack. This Dou Sheng skeleton seemed to be absorbing the strength within the blood fog to replenish itself. That black-robed elder from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe suddenly had a sunken expression as he coldly cried out. Everyone were startled when they heard these words of his. Their gazes looked over and did indeed see that the blood-red color on the body of the Dou Sheng skeleton becoming increasingly dark. The surrounding black fog was also swiftly flowing into his body. Old Mr. Dou Sheng, it is time to attack. Xiaoyan cried out in a deep voice. The corner of Old Ghost Dou Sheng's eyes twitched. He endured the impulse he had to kill Xiaoyan with a slap as he clenched his teeth and said, The old me knows this. There is no need for you to say anything more. Old Ghost Dou Sheng understood that there was no time for him to continue delaying after his voice sounded. His body moved, and it transformed into a blurry black figure that rushed towards the blood skeleton that was at the middle of the hall. Vast and mighty Dou Qi surged out from the body of Old Ghost Dou Sheng like a volcano in all directions. This aura caused the blood fog that permeated within the large hall to become a little thinner. The morale of quite a number of people were braced when they saw this mighty aura of Old Ghost Dou Sheng. Creak! The blood glint within the eyes of the skeleton looked towards the black figure that rushed over while being accompanied by vast and mighty Dou Qi. It moved its jaws up and down a little before taking a step forward. A dark red skeleton hand directly grabbed towards Old Ghost Dou Sheng. Qi! The speed of the skeleton was extremely frightening. He had just lifted his hand when the space in front of him was directly torn apart. His hand penetrated through the shattered space. It had already appeared in front of Old Ghost Dou Sheng when it next appeared. The frightening speed of this blood-colored skeleton also caused the heart of old ghost Dou Sheng to sink. His hand was tightened into a fist, and the dou qi within his body gathered on his right arm before it was suddenly thrown outward. Bang! A fist violently smashed on the palm of the skeleton. However, the seemingly weak skeleton was currently even harder than steel. This punch of old ghost Dou Sheng, which contained all of his strength, merely forced back this Dou Sheng skeleton by a step. On the other hand, he was forced back by over a dozen steps, appearing a little miserable. However, this old ghost Dou Sheng was also a vicious character. His mission this time around was to bring this Dou Sheng skeleton back. Therefore, he did not dare to be lazy. After stabilizing his body, he moved once again. His body shot outwards and once again became entangled with the Dou Sheng skeleton. A big battle erupted. Xiao Yin and the rest watched the big battle. They were involuntarily a little speechless. This Dou Sheng skeleton was indeed very powerful. Even an expert like old ghost Dou Sheng was being suppressed until he continued to be defeated despite using his full strength. This is merely just a remnant spiritual imprint. Just how frightening will it be if it is a completely elite Dou Sheng? This thought flashed across the hearts of quite a number of people at this moment. Clearly, the fighting strength of this skeleton had caused them to be a little shocked. Chi! While everyone were exclaiming, a couple of rushing wind sound was suddenly emitted from the large hall that was covered by a blood fog. A couple of figures charged out from the blood fog with lightning-like speed, after which they fiercely attacked old ghost Dou Sheng. Everyone glanced over and found that they were actually the human puppets that had yet to be completely finished off earlier. After the intense big battle earlier, those human puppets had killed quite a number of experts. However, there were a couple of them that had been shattered into dust by the combined attacks of many experts. However, there were still 6 of them that remained. The expression of old ghost Dou Sheng changed immediately when these 6 appeared together. He was already at a disadvantage. If these human puppets were to join the matter, he would end up dying in this place within less than 10 exchanges. Bastard! Why are all of you still watching the show? Quickly attack! Old ghost Dou Sheng roared furiously. His body rushed backwards after he stomped on the ground with his foot. Valley Chief Tang Zhen, Valley Chief Bing He, and this young friend Xiao Yin. The 4 of us will attack together and aid old ghost Dou Sheng in finishing of this Dou Sheng skeleton. What do you say? That black-robed old man from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe was aware that they can no longer simply watch the show after hearing the furious cry of old ghost Dou Sheng immediately. His eyes turned towards Tang Zhen and Bing He. Their strength had reached the level of a 5-star and 4-star Dou Zuns respectively. However, the thing that surprised everyone was that he had actually called Xiao Yin, who was merely a 1-star Dou Zun, when he opened his mouth. Xiao Yin moved his finger. He glanced at the black-robed old man. This old fellow was clearly worried that he would end up having an overly easy time and possess a great amount of remaining strength. This was disadvantageous to them. Therefore, he wanted to pull Xiao Yin into the most dangerous battleground. Yes. Tang Zhen and Bing Hezun nodded while Xiao Yin was in deep thought. Seeing this, Xiao Yin could only nod his head. He looked around him and said, "These 6 human puppets will be left to all of you experts. Mr. Xiao Yin, please be rest assured that these puppets will not disturb all of you." There were still quite a number of experts present. Although their legs would tremble when facing a Dou Sheng skeleton, they could still deal with these 6 puppets by relying on their large numbers. Be careful, little fairy doctor whispered. Yes, all of you should also pay more attention. If the situation is not right, you should all leave first. There is no need to bother about me. I will be fine. Xiao Yin nodded. His eyes exchanged looks with Tang Zhen and the others before the 4 of them rushed out at the same time. They became like large birds that hurried into the large hall. After which, they and old ghost Dou Sheng encircled around the Dou Sheng skeleton. Xiao Yan's group had just began to attack when the other experts within the large hall also got into action. Numerous figures once again rushed into the large hall. Powerful Dou Qi surged and lured away those 6 puppets. After which, the large number of people surged forward like locusts. In an instant, an intense battle erupted within the large hall. Old ghost Dou Sheng sighed in relief when he saw Feng Xian, Tang Zhen, and the others coming to aid him. He spoke in a deep voice, "Everyone, let's attack together. Be careful of this fellow's swift speed." The few people nodded slightly when they heard old ghost Dou Sheng's reminder. Most of them were extremely experienced old individuals. Even though Xiao Yan appeared young, none of those old demons present dared to underestimate this young man, who had caused most of them to suffer some loss. "Let's attack together." The black-robed old man, Huang Xian, who elder from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe, cried out. His voice had just sounded when his arm trembled. A pair of wings were extended. His speed also suddenly increased at this moment. With a flash of his body, he became the first to appear above the head of the Dou Sheng skeleton. He waved his large sleeve, and a sharp palm wind covered the latter. After Huang Xian attacked, Tang Zhen, Bing He Zunjia, Old Ghost Dou Sheng, and Xiao Yan also rushed over one after another. Dou Qi erupted from within their bodies. Their vast and mighty Dou Qi was just like a monstrous wave that covered the Dou Sheng skeleton. Incomparably sharp wind violently struck onto that skeleton, and waves after waves of sparks erupted. The Dou Sheng skeleton appeared to be in a flurry in the face of the attack from Xiao Yan's group. Currently, it was no longer that supreme Dou Sheng. With the strength of Xiao Yan's group, it was not difficult for them to destroy him.
Clang, clang, clang.
The limbs of Xiao Yan's group violently landed on the Dou Sheng skeleton as sparks flew. Each time they struck heavily on it, it would result in the blood color on the skeleton to pale a little. The blood glow within the skeleton's eyes also gradually became weak. The hearts of Xiao Yan's group were surprised when they saw that the attack had quite a good effect. They increased their attacking speed. At the same time, the eyes of old ghost Dou Sheng also flickered. Qi. A silver glow flashed under Xiao Yan's feet as he directly rushed into the area within half a foot from the Dou Sheng skeleton. Purple-brown flame lingered over his hand as it suddenly slammed violently on the rib cage of the skeleton. While bringing about some eye-piercing sparks, it also completely scattered the blood color on the rib cage. Xiao Yan withdrew after having succeeded in his first attack. His eyes suddenly paused on the bones that had turned jade white in color. He could vaguely see some unusual words on it. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over this kind of strange words. He was initially startled before a glint flashed across his eyes. A disbelief immediately surged up his heart. These words, could they be the Tian class Dou technique?